It's not just what's happening at the grocery store, what's happening at the restaurant. It's what's happening in the environment. What environmental things are occurring? Have there been floods? Have there been hurricanes, etc.? Like, what are things that could impact the safety of the food that's growing outside? Or what are impacts that could happen that affect foods that being manufactured? Like, are there issues in the building? Is there a big hole in the ceiling where the birds are flying in and pooping on the conveyor belts? Not that that's ever happened or anything.
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chains, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reid.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show.
Welcome to a very special milestone episode of Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. It's our 100th. Over the past 4 years, we've explored the evolving landscape of supply chain innovation, from defining industry shifts to everyday changes that keep us on our toes. We're honored to celebrate this journey with you all. So, whether you've been with us since episode 1 or are just tuning in, thank you for being a part of the conversation. Let's dive into what's next with Angela Fields from the FDA. Reid and I had such an amazing conversation with Angela about food safety, how keeping consumers safe with safe food is so very important to Angela and the FDA, how traceability and food traceability has evolved over the years. And it was just such a great conversation and really eye-opening.
Hi, Angela. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're delighted that you can spend some time with us here today. We're looking forward to this conversation, but before we get there, can you just for our audience, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll jump into the FDA aspect of it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Angela Fields. I am an epidemiologist by training. So I have my master's in public health and I did my undergraduate in biology. So I've been a science nerd all my life. So it's nice that I get to work with a group of other science and food nerds. So that's always a delight. But yeah, I've been at the FDA for almost 15 years now, working in foodborne illness outbreak, traceability initiatives. So I've been around the block a few times, got to see some really cool things and be a part of some scary but cool outbreaks. And, it's been really rewarding to be able to know that, I'm able to have such an impact on public health real time every day.
This is going to be a great conversation.
It is. And Angela is one of the most passionate people I know. From a food safety perspective, what does food safety mean and why is it so important? I mean, we all eat, so I'm assuming that's why it's so important, but just give us an overview of food safety from your and FDA perspective.
So food safety is really where we're trying to examine the methods and the practices that are needed to make sure that all food is safe for consumption. I mean, as you just said, we all eat food, right? We all encounter food. So it's important to know that the practices that the folks that are producing that food are safe, that they are sanitary conditions. And obviously, we want to make sure that we try to mitigate any risks as much as possible. So what things can we do from a preventative nature to ensure that this food is as safe as it can be? Obviously, there are things that can go wrong, human error, but it's really important for us to really evaluate these practices and do a lot of education and outreach so folks can understand the value of trying to anticipate where things could go wrong in hopes that it will stop things from going wrong.
When I got into the food safety space where we were talking about traceability, we were also talking about things like water that is irrigating the fields and how that could potentially have impacts, not good impacts, or good impacts, right, to the food. And so when you're talking about food safety, it's not just at a restaurant and folks washing their hands. It's like from beginning to end of the supply chain.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something that sometimes people forget. Like, it is a very holistic approach, right? It's not just what's happening at the grocery store, what's happening at the restaurant. It's what's happening in the environment. What environmental things are occurring? Have there been floods? Have there been hurricanes, etc.? Like, what are things that could impact the safety of the food that's growing outside? Or what are impacts that could happen that affect foods that are being manufactured? Like, are there issues in the building? Is there a big hole in the ceiling where the birds are flying in and pooping on the conveyor belts? Not that that's ever happened or anything. It's looking and evaluating from a holistic perspective of not just what's happening at each location, but what's happening in the environment, whether it be a production facility or the actual environment itself.
I am so intrigued. I mean, being a person that lives by a lake, just went through a major, still dealing with hurricane relief and rebuilding from Helene from 2024. A person that also grew up in New York City area, raised in New Jersey, seen plenty of mice in restaurants when you weren't supposed to type of thing. But I love the fact that it is holistic. It's not just, how did you package this? And did you pasteurize or not pasteurize? It's from the field to the table is where we're really looking at all of this. Like, yes, you're using an aquifer and you're watering your fields. That's great. But we just had a storm. The storm caused a catastrophic event, which caused a chemical plant to lose their thing and it went into the aquifer. And now you need to retest again because I'm still testing my well water from the storm.
Wow.
Because, we had 10 feet of water above the ground and everything went into the well. And guess what's up the road from me? A farm
Of course.
with cows. And everyone's like, it's so beautiful. You're so lucky to live next to a farm and it's so pretty. But when you have something like that, you don't realize. And I'm glad that there's folks like yourself out there, Angela, that are helping like the best practices. It's not just what's the rules and regulations, but it's the best practices. And it's what have we learned? What worked in 1930 doesn't work in 1990, doesn't work in 2025, or we evolve. So let's focus in just a little bit on this acronym that we all love, FSMA, FSMA. I've heard people say it a lot of different ways, but it's the Food Safety Modernization Act, and specifically the 204 amendment regulation. Can you level set us on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed in 2011. And basically, this was a shift, right, for us to go from a more reactive state to a proactive state. What can we do from a prevention aspect? What are different regulations that we can craft to help us, again, try to prevent these issues from happening and really change the mindset and culture that's happening in the food safety arena so that people are learning how to take steps to look for these critical points where, contamination could occur. So that's really what shifted. And so born out of that was the food traceability rule, which falls under FSMA 204D. It was born out of this idea that, with our outbreak response process, we needed better tracing and tracking. We were finding that a lot of the issues that were occurring with our outbreak response work was that we didn't have the records that we needed. We weren't getting them as fast as we needed them. And then, of course, as you all, as a standards organization, we weren't speaking the same language. So, like, having these conversations in these moments where it's high intensity, high anxiety, people's lives are on the line, it's very difficult sometimes to be able to have good dialogue. So, by having this food traceability rule, it really gives us the opportunity to, have a better conversation, have a better foundation of where people need to start, and then continue on the conversation so that they know what we need for effective tracing and tracking. Because obviously, we want to get food off the market as quickly as possible and try to mitigate the risk as quickly as possible.
I remember back in like 2008-ish, right? There was a big spinach outbreak, I believe. And when there's outbreaks, everything comes off the shelves. It's a category killer, I guess, right? Because you can't pinpoint exactly where that product, spinach or otherwise, came from. And so by having this information more quickly at your fingertips, instead of a whole category of product, you can get that product, right? Identify.
Right.
And then out of the supply chain. And from a FSMA 204 perspective and this regulation, that's helping protect consumers and brands and stores.
Liz, listening to what you were just talking about, like it's more easy, but it's for everyone. It's a win for industry. It's a win for brands. It's a win for the public and the consumer. And I think a lot of folks look at this, oh, here's another regulation. But if you think about it, as a brand, I don't have to take everything off. I can mitigate. I can keep it to a store, a region. I don't know, Angela, if you have an example of where it was, we didn't know, so we took everything across the whole country.
Oh, no, of course not. We never did that in like 2018. right before Christmas. We never did that. I mean, it's exactly that, right? Our goal, and I think sometimes, when people think about government regulation and oversight, that it always feels like we're just trying to come down on people. But honestly, we are also there to try and protect the industry, right? So it's a twofold measure. We want to protect humans, we want to protect consumers, but we also do want to protect industry because, again, we all need the food to eat. And so we understand the impact of not being able to narrow the scope and to really communicate as specifically and clearly as we would like to in these situations. And of course, for us, we're always going to value human life, right? So we're always going to value public health. Out of an abundance of caution, we're going to go a little further than we might maybe need to because we don't want that one person to fall through the cracks and then say, oh man, we should have made a different decision in that situation, at least as best as we can. And so I think, again, to your point, trying to look at this from what are the benefits, not just from better tracking and tracing, but within my own company, how can I leverage this information to benefit me in other ways besides just slapping a label on a pallet or, knowing what your traceability lot code is or something like that? Where are the other benefits that come from this information? How can I better control my inventory? How can I better control what's coming in and out? How can I better understand shelf life and best buy dates, et cetera, to make sure that I'm rotating my product properly? There are definitely a lot of other benefits that can be seen as a result of capturing this information.
This episode is brought to you by Aaron Graphics, who specializes in same-day barcode label printing and resizing of barcode EPS files for retail, and WholeChain, a blockchain-based traceability solution designed to bring trust and transparency to fragmented supply chains. Thank you to our partners for making this episode possible. If you're interested in becoming or working with GS1 US solution provider, please visit the link in the episode description. So a bunch of the conversation I know that you're a part of and that we're a part of with industry is they're saying it's not easy. But when you start putting the pieces in place, yes, you need to comply with FSMA 204. It's not easy. And there are so many other benefits that you may be able to get down the road, and all of that information and data. And it's not just within your four walls, right? It's across the supply chain. And it's so fun to be in a room where lights go off. And granted, these are big organizations and very small organizations.
Yeah.
You need to start getting on board. And that's challenging, but there's been a recent intention of delay, right, for the rule. So mid-2028.
July 20th, 2028.
But I would say, and we're going to shift gears a little away from FSMA and more to like really cool, like science, I guess, stuff. But my suggestion, and I'm assuming your suggestion, is for organizations to start, don't wait. Start having conversation if you're not already. We can help. GS1 US can help. Trading partners can help. Other industry associations can help.
Liz and I were talking right before this. She has sophomores. I have a sophomore, junior, and senior in high school, and we're getting ready for college. So my wife and I have been spending the last 3 nights learning about financial aid and all this stuff. And I had to defer my tax submission this year because of the hurricane problem we had, and we had all this stuff going on. But it's the adulting. It's having to look into the details. And I know I was a former business owner, and you get hit with all these taxes and regulations and all these things, and you always feel like you're being hit. But it's the most successful companies that embrace it and systemize it and really take advantage of the whole thing. And those are the ones that scale. So I'm glad that we have this little pause to July 2028. But I agree with you, Liz. I mean, you really got to lean into this now. This isn't like the blessing for procrastinators.
You and I were chatting. There was a outbreak, I think, or maybe a potential recall, and the FDA did receive records in the electronic sortable spreadsheet format. Can you just tell that story really quickly? Because what you're seeing is this information works.
We had an outbreak that was happening, of course, leafy greens. And then when we requested the information, and this is a company that we've had conversations before, we were aware that they are, in the traceability space. They've been very forward thinking and leaning in relating to the food traceability rule and implementing it. So surprisingly enough, we issued the assignment for record collection. And when we finally got the information from them, they had submitted a portion of it in that electronic sortable spreadsheet. And I can't tell you, one, how exhilarating that was because, it's wonderful to have the experience for Sertl and then be the person that wrote the rule, asked for these things, and received the first one. So that's always very exciting. But in addition to that, like the ability for us to analyze that information so quickly, it was a phenomenal experience. While we did have a little bit of an idea of what we were looking for, to see it and be able to visualize it and use it, it literally take a couple minutes for us to make the connection from the data that they'd sent us. I mean, I can't tell you how night and day that is, right? How monumental that is. Because when you think about record collection, and you're getting all these PDFs and you're getting all this information, and you're like, okay, what does this date mean? What does this word mean? What is this quantity? What is this? And to see it all laid out so nicely, clearly, it's great. And it took us literally minutes. And then we were able to move on to the next portion of that investigation and ask for records. Within 24 hours, we were issuing another assignment to ask for more records versus days and weeks
I was
that it has
just
taken
going to
us.
go there, Angela, like versus paper and validation and phone calls and facsimiles.
Absolutely. I have a big mailer box in my office of like this massive stack of records from an outbreak a long time ago. There was so much information. They literally physically mailed us this massive mailer box of records. And like, so we're sitting on the floor, like flipping through, trying to analyze, create tables and such. So again, the benefit is not only just for FDA's standpoint, right? Because now by getting this information more quickly, we can rule in it and rule out people too, right? Because now we can make these comparisons. We can spend more time on the analytical side as opposed to just the data entry side of things.
Wow. That is a really cool and energizing story. And like real time, just happening as we're transitioning, the FSMA Food Safety Modernization Act has been bumped out a little bit, but people are already ahead of the game. They were ready for the original launch. And that's great. But we got to tell that more. What triggers a recall? Like, how does this whole recall, like you hear them in the news, you turn the news on, oh, we have this recall here, E. coli or this or that or whatever, but who triggers it?
So recalls can be triggered in a variety of ways. They can be triggered by, if there's a product that's mislabeled, if there's an undeclared allergen, if there's issues with the labeling or instructions on that particular product. And then you also have situations where a firm could identify contamination. Maybe they're doing some environmental monitoring. They've identified that, there was salmonella in this food. And so now they want to recall it based on that. And then there obviously also could be that connection to an outbreak. So then when the recall is triggered by us, then of course we're performing an outbreak investigation, and then we're taking steps and have identified that, they could have been the potential source of contamination. So of course we want to get the food off the marketplace. And so these recalls can either be majority of the recalls, which I don't know that people probably really know, majority of our recalls are actually voluntary. So it's us going to the firm in conjunction with CDC, presenting the information that we have and asking them to do the right thing. And most of the times they do the right thing. We also do have the ability to do mandatory recall. We don't typically have to utilize that as much, but that is definitely a tool in the toolbox that we have available to us if necessary. And then, of course, we can leverage, state and local resources as well and whatever regulatory powers that they have if necessary in some of these situations.
Is there any type of like spot checking that goes on from a federal government side, like where you're going out and just randomly testing things, and if you find something, you kind of go back?
Yeah, so we have a variety of things that we do in conjunction with our state and local partners. So we do some retail testing can happen. We have surveillance assignments that we issue yearly. So we will identify firms that, maybe we had concerns about. Maybe by the time we got to the field, it was already plowed over. So next year we want to go look at their practices real time. So we do some prevention in that way. We also have, in addition to those surveillance assignments, of course, we have work plan assignments where we try to regularly inspect various firms so that we can see, what they're doing as well during their production. So that's on a more normal cycle versus the surveillance assignments are kind of born out of outbreak response, lesson learned kind of situations.
I'm feeling good about food safety this morning.
Right? How can you not be excited? It's Food Safety Fridays.
That might be a new
Oh, I have
thing.
an idea.
See?
I have an idea.
Uh-oh. I can see Liz's gears turning.
Man, seriously. Food Safety Fridays is like just a little more broad. We get everything. Tell me if you've seen in your years doing the work, if there's like best practices that you've seen from a company perspective, industry, whether it's manufacturing or farmers, so that they don't have these recalls happening. Are there ways that they can get ahead of it?
Of course, number one is trying to comply with all the regulations that are applicable. Honestly, I have to take my hat off to the folks in the food industry because it's an unbelievable amount of regulations that you have to follow, not just from FDA, but potentially USDA, state and local. So there's a lot of things that you're juggling. So it is actually
We're seeing SNAP in the news as well. So like we have to be patient with our partners here.
right. Absolutely. It's really a feat that folks are able to actually produce food because I don't even know how you wrap your head around all of that. But then, of course, it's always, having things like a recall plan and doing recall checks and testing and making sure that you're communicating with your supply chain partners about setting expectations, right? I like to think of a lot of this stuff as really just human interaction, right? Like the things that you do in your everyday life to maintain relationships with your friends and family are a lot of the same things and a lot of the same work that you have to do to make sure that the food you're producing is safe, right? What are the blind spots? What are things where I need to look at where I can try and anticipate where the risks are? What plans can I develop and put into place and practice with the people that I'm working with so that they can be prepared so that in the moment of crisis, it's not the first time that we're doing this. And now everybody's running around with their hair on fire and we don't know what to do because we're all panicking, right? It's a lot of like, what are the preventative steps that we can take? What are lessons learned that I can not only glean from information that we put out, whatever documentation that we publish publicly about outbreaks that we've done or just other studies that we've done. And then also like what are my trading partners doing that is allowing them to also have safe food production or, better communication, more interoperability in general. Like what are the things that other people are doing that I can take with me to apply and shape and apply in my specific situation?
Let's talk on the consumer side. How can consumers stay informed? What's the best place for the latest recalls? And what should consumers be doing to find out?
Again, we have several ways we can do this, right? So you can stay informed. If we have large outbreaks, typically we will put out some type of public advisory. When we have concrete information to share on the FDA site, that'll be on your local news sometimes national news, depending on how large the outbreak can be. We also have a listserv that you can sign up for that will allow you to get notifications when recalls happen, and you can identify whether it's just food, animal food, everything, medical devices, biologics, etc. So you can be aware of the various recalls that are happening. And then, of course, we also have the core investigation table. So every week, every Wednesday, we update our core investigation table to be more transparent about all of the outbreaks that are currently ongoing. So some of them will have, links to public advisories, recalls, etc. And some of them will be more generic of unknown because obviously we can't post information until we have more things to speak about. But at least you can see, there's this many salmonellas or listeria, E. coli, et cetera, whatever we're investigating, you can get a snapshot of what's currently going on so that you can have a perspective of like, okay, there are a number of things that may be happening that we don't really know about that we're investigating.
I get that email and it is fascinating. It's just fascinating to be able to see kind of the inner workings too of what y'all do. It's really cool.
It can go from bats in the salad bag or, an undeclared allergen. It's a wide range of things.
Yeah.
I remember that bat in the salad bag. Oh my gosh. You must have some stories. You could retire on a coffee book table of all the crazy things from food safety, the FDA.
We have seen some interesting things, that's for sure. That is for sure.
Oh my gosh.
It's like an emergency room nurse. It's like you see it all.
Reid and I have two questions that we ask at the end of the podcast. So whether it be in your personal life or your professional life, what is the favorite technology that you're using right now?
Okay, so of course in my professional life, it has to be my computer and my smartphone because the apps, Outlook, etc. Like, how can I function without my calendar? Like, impossible. That's actually professionally and personally because the way my brain is set up, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't.
It's not
exist.
It's not happening.
Exactly. It doesn't exist, right? And then in my personal life, my favorite technology has to be our Google Home Alexa setup because my family, as much as I love them, don't always, turn up all the lights and turn up all the devices and TVs and etc.
You have a good night scenario that you do,
Yes,
right?
yes. And then it's also fun for the kids because we can like turn the lights on different colors and make it fun for bedtime and that kind of thing. So Google Home is probably my favorite because I can also yell at them through the intercom too. And so it's fantastic. It's all inclusive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so the other question we ask our guests is, what's something new you want to learn in the near future?
So, in our home, we are focusing on languages right now. So, my children are in Spanish immersion schools. I'm trying to obviously brush up on my Spanish because I have not utilized my Spanish since college. And so, I'm a little rusty. And then also with that, my children are very interested in language now and different cultures. So, we are exploring learning Korean right now because they're very interested in trying to learn more languages than just Spanish. So, my newest thing is I'm working on trying to learn to speak Korean.
It sounds like some travel in the near future for you and your family.
Absolutely. I may or may not have some family members that live over there. So,
You might
I
have to
have
go
some
visit.
connections.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, Angela, thank you so much again for joining us today. This has been just a riveting conversation, chock full of so much information. And as Liz stated from the beginning, like, we just love your passion, and we're so glad that you could spend some time with us today.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. It's always a privilege to be able to talk about all things food safety and, really bring this information to the public because I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of nuances that people don't know about. So I'm excited that I get to share that with you all in hopes that we can all keep moving forward.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.